25 anni.
So Lionel, claims have been made here that the original balsamic vinegar comes not from Modena, but from right here, pretty much where we're sitting.
And we're about 6 kilometres from Ferrara.
Correct. But we're not about to drink some balsamic vinegar, I hope. We're about to sample the wine made right here at Le Pradine, near Ferrara.
Pradine è il nome dell'azienda che significa prati.
Well, it sounds good.
More fields.
See, Meadows, the name of our accommodation for the evening. Very nice it is too. It's called Le Pradine.
Well, let's have a taste, shall we?
You are listening to the Cycling Podcast at the Giro d'Italia in association with Rafa. From grand tours to group rides, the Champs-Élysées to coffee stops, Rafa exists to celebrate the world's most beautiful sport. Today we are in Imola.
Hello, I'm Lionel Birnie and I'm with Daniel Friebe.
Hello, Lionel.
What do you think? What do you think of the wine from this very place here, made here, on site?
Or very close. They make balsamic vinegar here, as we heard. They make their own wine, I presume. Well, no, we're not really in the right area for olive oil, but I think, as we're going to hear later, this is a real hotbed of Italian cuisine, which will delight you, Lionel. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any Lambrusco tonight. You enjoyed that last year. We were in a slightly different part of Emilia, but who knows?
Well, we're about 6 kilometres from Ferrara, where the stage starts tomorrow. We've come up from Imola, the motor racing circuit. It struck me last year as we came up this, well, it's a plain, isn't it? It's pan flat, absolutely flat here. It's home to Ferrari. It's home to balsamic vinegar, Parma ham, Lambrusco, the red Lambrusco that I enjoyed so much. Parmesan cheese as well. Pretty much everything that's great about Italy in a sort of quite a lot of the things that are great about Italy. Great. Maybe some of the exports, perhaps.
Great and edible. Also, sadly, Imola is famous, notorious, the motor racing circuit, for the death of Ayrton Senna, isn't it?
Well, it is indeed. We were there most of the afternoon watching the race unfold. It was stage 12 of the Giro from Osimo to Imola, 214 kilometres. And, we were expecting a fairly run-of-the-mill sprint, but it turned out to be anything but, really. It was a tale of two teams. Joy for Bora-Hansgrohe and despair, perhaps a bit strong, but certainly tetchiness around the Quick Step bus, because their man Elia Viviani he was more or less abandoned by his team. At the very least, there was serious miscommunication there. The stage was won by Sam Bennett, the Irish rider with Bora. That's his second stage of the Giro. And yes, as you say, Daniel, it finished on the motor racing circuit that used to hold the San Marino Grand Prix, and it's where the great Brazilian motor racing driver Ayrton Senna died in 1994. I think Roland Ratzenberger also died that week. It was a pretty terrible week for motor racing. I don't know what you think about when bike races finish on motor racing circuits. I'm never normally terribly enamoured, but today was a bit different.
Yeah, today was good in the sense that there were grandstands and full grandstands either side of the finishing straight, which made for a decent spectacle. Also, the finishing straight at that point is not too wide. It's not really any wider than a normal finishing straight sort of road. So I thought it looked pretty good, and it was a great finale over the Tremonti climb just outside of Imola. A real test, a real sort of kind of risk-reward sort of climb, a bit like the Poggio in Milan-San Remo, where you were kept guessing right until the last moment whether a sprinter or multiple sprinters were going to stick with the front group. In actual fact, Sam Bennett was one of the better climbers over the Tremonti climb, and dare I say, reminiscent of his teammate Peter Sagan. Over the next few months and probably next year, I don't know how many opportunities Sam Bennett is going to get in hilly, classic-style races with Sagan there. However, today he suggested that he's more versatile than we've previously given him credit for.
Yeah, I think the thing that made the big difference with the motor racing circuit, because normally the cyclists look like just ants almost on the big wide roads, and they're dwarfed by it really, but it was different here, and the main reason it was different was because they popped onto the circuit, crossed the finish line, and then popped off the circuit again and did that really interesting little hill, which turned out to be one of the most important parts of the race. Just to recap, in the tail of the tapper, it was a race animated by a break of 5. All 5 riders coming from the Italian wildcard teams today, which is significant. We've got something coming up in the second part of the podcast which kind of matches that theme. There were 2 riders from Bardiani in there, Mirko Maestri and Manuel Seni. Bardiani's home race today, isn't it? They're from this region.
Yeah, very much a team based with its roots in Emilia-Romagna. Bruno Reverberi, the kingpin of that team, is a very proud Emiliano.
Well, we'll be hearing a bit more from him a bit later, won't we? The other riders in that 5-man break were Jacopo Mosca and Eugene Zupa of the Viglia team, and Marco Frapporti of Androni. Their 100% record continues. This is going to go all the way to the end of the Giro, I think. We'll also hear from Gianni Savio a bit later on. But
quick footnote, Lionel. Zupa, although he has an Albanian passport, rides for Albania, spent most of his life in this region as well, in Emilia-Romagna.
So it was an all-Italian break, really, just about. Anyway, they had a good lead, and they were still about 40 seconds clear with 28 kilometres to go. There was some heavy rain, which partly contributed to splitting the peloton. I've later found out that it was quite crosswindy as well. And when there were splits in the peloton, it became apparent that Elia Viviani was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Bora drove it to try and distance Viviani. Sam Bennett, of course, was in front of the split. The other 2 riders that were caught out were Domenico Pozzovivo and Richard Carapaz, who are 4th and 5th overall. They managed to get back to the group. Viviani did not, and he cut a pretty desolate figure at the finish. Tim Wellens made an attack just before the Imola circuit. Stayed away for a while, but it was a pretty doomed effort. And then it was on that climb where everything kicked off, really. Diego Ulissi of UAE Team Emirates attacked, and he was off the front. That was an interesting looking move. But what was really significant was that Sam Bennett went to the front on the climb and was really driving it. The reason he was so keen to be on the front there was because he was just concerned about the descent. He wanted to be at the front just in case there were any difficulties or crashes on that descent.
We were fairly sure that it was Sam Bennett. Well, we are sure now that it was Sam Bennett, but when we were watching the race in real time, we were slightly dubious as to whether Sam Bennett would be so close to the front on a climb like the Tremonti. But it's very difficult because all the Bora riders wear the same jersey. It's very difficult to tell them apart.
Wow! It's taken you this long to work out that the teams all wear the same jerseys.
Well, not in every case.
Well, not in every case, no. Sometimes there's a leader's jersey or national championships jersey,
exactly.
But I sat in on the.
And also, Conrad is also wearing, or one of the Bora riders is the Austrian national champion. Which one is it?
Well, no, let's not. This is not terribly relevant to the tale of the tapper. I actually sat in on the Sam Bennett press conference, and so got a little bit to say about why he was at the front. Anyway, on the run-in, Carlos Betancourt went across to Ulissi, and then Mate Mohoric, who won 2 days ago, joined Betancourt as Ulysses slipped back. Going into the circuit, it was Mohoric and Betancourt narrowly ahead of the peloton, and they sort of went through the corners. As they came up to the line, rather than a sort of conventional sprint, the 2 were still ahead, and so Sam Bennett opened up his sprint very, very early. To sort of recap what the Irishman said in the press conference afterwards, well, he said that he wanted to be on the front for the descent because he was a little bit worried about it. He said on the team bus in the morning to his teammates that it had to be a sprint today, not a sprint for third place, but a sprint for the victory. And if that meant that he then had to do his sprint on his own without any lead out or support, then so be it. So the Bora riders' job was just to bring it back together. They more or less managed to do that, but Bennett basically seized the initiative and made that jump, and he said once he'd caught the other 2, Mohoric and Betancourt, he was a little worried for a moment about how far it was still to go to the line, but he already had a big enough gap to win the stage.
I've got my hand up, Lionel. The Austrian national champion is Gregor Mühlberger, and he is not riding the Giro.
Live corrections corner this evening. That's an improvement, I think. Anyway, Sam Bennett's second Giro stage win. He said that he felt really confident about making the decisions today, having had a victory already in the bag. And it's amazing how much a win can just change a rider's whole demeanour. I mean, Daniel, you talked after Bennett's first win at Praia Amare how he seems to be a little bit down on himself sometimes. It sort of chastises himself for any mistakes he makes, and sprinting is all about making and rectifying mistakes, isn't it? I mean, today there was absolutely no doubt he took full responsibility and did something that we don't often see the sprinters do.
No, he looks emboldened, doesn't he? He's emboldened partly because the sprinters field in this Giro is, unfortunately, as we've mentioned on numerous occasions, pretty weak. As we keep saying as well, it's also a fairly limited number of really fast riders who can climb. Paolo Bettini was in the press room today, and I was looking at him at one point thinking that he would have won about 45 stages so far in this Giro had he still been riding.
Well, even
I mean, how many stages would Paolo Bettini potentially have won? 5, 6 already?
Yeah, well, he would have had a chance on, well, certainly today, just about every little uphill finish, he would have been there. Yeah, you're right. But as you've been saying, there's no real punchers either. Well, it's a field that is not exactly deep with either sprinters or punchers. But Sam Bennett did a very good. He basically did a bit of each, really. He was a sprinter and a puncher today, and he got across the line first. At the finish, spoke to a couple of his teammates, Christoph Finsteng of Germany. He finished in 19th place, so he was with Bennett right to the end, and also to Andreas Schillinger, who was one of the riders piling on the pressure at the point where it was becoming obvious that Viviani was out of position. Congratulations on the win. At what point did you know that it was splitting behind and that Viviani was caught behind?
We had the whole time connection to the team, and they talked to us that Viviani is back, and Sam rode a really good race today. We know he's really strong, and we know when we survived in the front, the last climb, then we had a really good chance for a good result.
It was important, though, to go full gas to make sure that no one could come back from behind.
Definitely you must go full gas, because it was only after the climb, only downhill to the finish, so it was high speed, and we know when you was in front, you're only in one line, so not so much people come back.
And did you know that Sam was going to go for that early long one?
We know that we had a tailwind today, so we know that he can also do a really long sprint. We tried to close the gap so fast as possible to the two guys in front, and then it was up to Sam, and
And did the fact that it was a motor racing circuit and the rain make it a tricky finish?
Definitely, because it's slippery, it's wet, everybody is on the limit, and we know it was also really hard finally with the last climb, and for that we are really happy with the victory.
And lastly, Sam Bennett had so many close results here last year, and at the start in Israel he was so disappointed, but when you win one, suddenly another one can come along.
I think when he won the first stage, then the stress was over, and now he's ready and ahead, and he know he can beat everyone, so for that I'm really happy for Sam, and we know he's really strong.
Andreas, I can see the smiles from all the teammates as they come in. That must be because Sam's a popular guy in the team.
Sam is since 5 years now in the team. He was growing up with us, and to see where he is now is incredible. It's so nice to see him winning here. The second time is unbelievable for us.
He had tears in his eyes when he won his first one, and now you almost have tears in your eyes again today.
Yeah. What can I say? It's a Grand Tour, and it's a second stage for our team, and also the team where we came from, and now we are here and winning stages. It's unbelievable. It's so nice.
And it was a real team effort today, because you came to the front when it started to split up in the rain. Was it the rain that caused those gaps to open?
Not just the rain. There was a section with some crosswinds as well in the rain. The peloton split it. It was a really hard part of the race, but we were always confident in front, and we tried our best and focused for the stage win.
A real warm feeling around the Bora bus today, and not surprisingly really, but also Sam Bennett has been with that team a long time. He's one of kind of the original guys really from that team, and there's a real sense that they wanted to see him make that breakthrough in the Giro, and 2 wins in the bag. no wonder they were all smiling. But it was a very different picture over at the Quick Step bus, parked a couple of buses along just outside the motor racing circuit there. Elia Viviani, no one was quite sure exactly what had happened to Viviani, but he was out of position on his own, isolated, and unfortunately for Viviani, at the time that he was in the back group, his teammate Stibar was driving quite hard on the front group, trying to bring the Wellens brake back. So it was a day of real miscommunication, and I spoke to the sports director, Rik Van Slyke, about what happened. Briefly, what happened to Elia Viviani today?
The main thing what we think is that he got a little bit of the cold. First, we were quite organized, and we don't know yet what happened, but on a certain moment there was a little acceleration in the field with Lotto Soudal and Bora. Our guys were in the front, and suddenly they say, "Oh, Elia is in the second group." They were surprised. They didn't know did he has to brake or because he lost the last of his teammates. I don't know. We have to find out. Then we made a few guys waiting. We brought them back in the circuit, and then we start saying to Stibar, "Okay, he's back. We can start controlling again, because if you lead Wellens too far away, you maybe never see him back." And then on the local circuit, he gets dropped again. So I think he will be. For me, it's taken about a cold because he dropped quite early his rain jacket, and with a 10 degrees difference of the start, it might affect on the body. But we will see. We will find out tonight. But anyway, tomorrow is another chance, and we go for it again.
So as you'd expect there, Daniel, playing it down a bit, but interesting that Van Slyke suggesting that perhaps the cold got to Viviani, maybe took off his rain cape too early, certainly in the wrong position and without teammates, and they thought he'd got back. They thought he got back to the front group, and I mean, it's very difficult to chastise them for making mistakes, but they made some big old mistakes, and there weren't any smiles around the bus. Davide Bramati looked, he had a face like thunder at the finish. When Viviani arrived back at the bus, he basically threw his bike down and stomped on. Yeah,
I saw a couple of strops at the finish today around the buses. Diego Alisi, there was no real petulance, there were no bike throwing, but he was lamenting the fact that his brakes didn't work on the descent. He was telling his mechanics in no uncertain terms that his braking was suboptimal.
Well, there's another sprint stage tomorrow. It could be Bennett against Viviani, all being way.
Is it a sprint stage? We go over the Montello, which is a climb that cyclists who live in or around the Treviso area call their palestra, their gym. There are about 10 or 15 ways you can go up the Montello. It was the scene, the venue for the Road World Championships in 1984 or 5.
1985,
won by Joop Zoetemelk. Lionel, you're wincing. I hope you're going to check this if you're not sure. The version of the Montello that was used on that occasion is different from the one that the riders will be going up tomorrow, and I don't think it's particularly hard the way they're going up tomorrow.
Well, one interesting thing about the sprint was obviously Viviani failed to score in the points competition, and Sam Bennett has really eaten into Viviani's lead, and the score at the moment stands Viviani 184 points, Bennett 162, and well, maybe tomorrow isn't necessarily a sprint, but the way that Bennett was climbing today, who knows, if he can just get over that, he may well be in a position to sprint for some points, if not sprint for the win, and then after that, if he can survive all the mountains, it comes down to a showdown in Rome. So it's a funny old competition this year, the points competition.
How many sprinters are we going to see? If we were to go to Venice Marco Polo Airport on Saturday morning, how many sprinters would we see in the departures lounge? Not as many as usual at this point in the Giro. This would probably be the place where they would usually bow out. It's often between stage 12 and 14, and we've of course got the Zoncolan coming on Saturday, another mountain stage afterwards.
I think that Modolo would probably drive home, so wouldn't go to the airport.
A community around the world. Stories and films with the most compelling characters. The world's finest apparel. Explore the world of cycling with Rafa.
Thank you to Rafa for sponsoring the cycling podcast. It's that time of the week again where we unveil the nominations for the Peddler de Charme prize for week 2, and the short list, the nominations are Luis Leon Sanchez. He's been nominated for honouring Michele Scarponi the other day, his former Astana teammate who died before last year's Giro. The race went through Scarponi's hometown, and Sanchez made sure he was in the break and able to lead through the town. Adam Hansen has been nominated for the cheeky attack and then hiding off the side of the road and then waiting for the bunch to go past and then settling in. But more for the fact that he then apologised afterwards and made sure that riders weren't going to be annoyed.
Bringing the game into disrepute.
Well, there you go. Daniels thinks he can't vote for Hansen. Well, we'll see, won't we? The public will decide. Swain Tuft has been nominated for the second week in a row, I suspect, for being Swain Tuft. A lot of people...
I think because of our kilometre zero, no?
Of course, Swain's World, which is on the Friends of the Podcast feed. If you want to listen to that, fascinating. I finally had a chance to listen to that this afternoon. An amazing character.
Before I forget, Lionel, talking of charming riders, at the start this morning we noticed that Anna Scarponi was there with the two twins. I forget the name. One is called Giacomo, but Michele Scarponi's widow, and she was greeted very, very warmly by, well, as you would expect, wherever she went this morning. But I particularly noticed that Esteban Chavez and Roman Kreuziger both came out of the Mitchelton-Scott team bus and spent a long time talking to Anna Scarponi, which was quite charming.
And the final nomination is Fausto Masnada of Androni. Now, he was in the break on the Stage 2 Gran Sasso d'Italia, and he was trying to win the King of the Mountains points, and his teammate Davide Ballerini pushed him over the line because Masnada had dropped his chain, basically. Now, that's against the rules, and he was relegated. But people have nominated him possibly for that, but possibly for being in the break several times, and possibly just for being called Fausto. I mean, the name that of Fausto Coppi. So they are the 4 nominations: Luis Leon Sanchez, Adam Hansen, Fausto Masnada, and Swain Tuft. And you can vote on Twitter.
On account of his name, Fausto, but you know what Masnada means in Italian?
No.
It's a group of people who are dedicated to acts of dishonesty and violence.
Oh, you're joking. Well, there we are. Well, let's see. The Giro is the Giro. So, it's the public have nominated the riders, and that is the shortlist. And we will open that up on the Twitter vote a bit later on. So have a look at that and vote. Now, Daniel, this morning you went off on a slightly secret mission. You dashed off from the car. I didn't know where you'd gone.
Well, in the spirit of what happened to us yesterday, when our hotel was raided, and prior to that had been bugged, we think, and we bugged the Bardiani-CSF team bus, and Bardiani, a wild card pick for this team. Of course, a year ago, you'll probably all remember, on the eve of the race, their Giro went very wrong indeed when they had 2 riders, Nicola Ruffoni and Stefano Pirazzi, who tested positive for a banned hormone. People do remember that, will remember that. However, they've been mainstays of the Italian peloton for a long time, based in Emilia-Romagna. They've struggled a little bit in this Giro d'Italia, but I think the pro-continental division teams are struggling more and more here in terms of really competing. Their budgets are, well, the budget of Bardiani will buy you about half a Peter Sagan, and their budget is about 2.5 million euros, as is Androni Giocattoli. Anyway, Lionel, our recorder, were on the team bus this morning to hear Stefano Zanata, the director sportivo Bardiani, give the riders instructions before what was going to be their home stage.
5 chilometri trasferimento, dopo c'è uno strappo subito.
5 kilometers, the neutralized zone, 5 kilometers. Then there's a little climb straight away here in Ancona. You go through the centre of town, then it's all flat. Let's see if there's a little break going away. Mirko, we've got you and Tonelli in reserve. So if you see Giuppa, Fraporti or Boivin, they're going for the classification for the kilometres off the front. And if there are maybe 4 or 5 guys, let's try and get into it. The stage is also quite long, and there'll be a slight tailwind in the afternoon. Maybe with some storms after 4:30 or 5 o'clock in Imola. We do 1 lap. You go onto the circuit, then over the finish line it's 15 kilometres to go. Then the climb starts. It's 2.5 kilometres long in total, but it goes up in steps. You all know it, so we'll see. If he can stay up there with Simeon, keep up in a good position. There are only 7.4 kilometres to the finish from the top. So it's descent, onto the circuit, 1 kilometre of flat, then we're inside. Barbo, if you're there, we can give him a hand. If he's gone backwards and you can help him regain positions over the top, then have a look. We know who the sprinters are. Sam Bennett's going a bit better than the others, but Modolo and Viviani are the ones with the teams, and they want a sprint. Get involved, but not like the other day. Don't lose positions. That's how we'll ride. Okay? Let's go.
Corremo così. E andiamo. Tranquilli. Buono?
I'm Manuel Senni, climber. Today's not my my stage because I'm a climber, and today is also a great day for me because we passed 10k from my house. I live in Cesenatico in Romagna, the city where Marco Bantani is born and he lived. For us it's very important to have every day a rider in the breakaway or try to do something in the final, but today's like a flat stage just with hill in the final. We'll try maybe in the first part of the race to put one guy in the breakaway and in the final to stay together in the climb and try with the fastest guys of us to do a great sprint.
I'm Roberto Reverberi. I'm the sport director of Bardiani-CSF.
It's important for us, certainly, because we've always done well on our home patch. We've got two guys today who are designated to get into breaks, Mirko Maestri and Alessandro Tonelli. Obviously it's going to be hard because it's one of the last chances for the sprinters, although there's that final climb of the Tre Monti, which will no doubt put the cat amongst the pigeons. So on attacks it might not even come down to a bunch sprint. We'll need a lot of luck. Our riders come from every corner of Italy, and we always tell them jokingly that they're coming to the centre of the earth when they join us. That's how we regard Emilia, because Bologna is a bit of a nerve centre for everything in Italy. For example, the food's good everywhere in Italy, but Emilia-Romagna is considered the cradle of Italian gastronomy. Parmigiano Reggiano, the best hams, we've got so many different specialities. We're famous for our primi piatti, our pasta dishes in particular. Tortelli, lasagne, we've got specialities in Emilia-Romagna that are known all over the world.
In Emilia sono I primi piatti che sono le specialità come I tortelli, le lasagne, tutte queste cose. Però sono I primi, sono proprio...
So the stage has just finished. Sam Bennett is the winner, and I was duped. I was duped by Manuel Senni and Bardiani, who assured me, well, Senni assured me that today wasn't the kind of stage where he would expect to get in a break, but he did get in a break, and he's going to be wet, I assume, and tired when he gets in because the weather is pretty stinking. Anyway, I'm just going to grab a word with him. In fact, here he comes now. Okay, Manuel, you lied to me this morning. You said this wasn't a stage for you, unlikely that you would get in the break. And what happened?
Like I said this morning, today was a great stage for me. A lot of fun along the road. It was incredible. All the road to come to Imola from Rimini was full of my fans. It's always amazing.
Terrible weather, but you got a nice kiss from your girlfriend at the end. And was that will that be one of the best memories of your career so far?
Yeah, also to have her at the finish is something happy, and is also for her.
Last thing, Manuel, this is your region. What should we eat tonight? What are the specialities that we should eat tonight?
Usually is special for in Romagna piadina with...
Not in the evening, at lunchtime.
In the evening, pizza.
Well, they needed to get riders in the break because this was their home stage, and they managed to get 2 riders in the break. So I wonder whether they'll be happy about that or not. I mean, they didn't go very far towards the finish, really. It would have been, to get to the motor racing circuit first time round, probably would have been their goal, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle, and it's a very young team. The average age of that team is about 24 point something. That's actually quite old for Bardiani. That the squad is incredibly young. At most other races, their average age is under 24. What we said earlier is right, that they are the Continental Division teams, Pro Conti Division teams are struggling more and more to compete. I mean, I had a chat with Luca Guercilena, the Trek Segafredo manager, the other day, and he was lamenting how agents, in particular, he was pointing the finger at agents, are really inflating the market, and effectively there are a lot of riders in the World Tour who are being paid too much, and there's a huge gulf now between the Pro Conti teams and their budgets and the World Tour teams, and I think that's also reflected sometimes in ability, and we've seen the Pro Conti teams at the Giro really restricted to what we would probably call vanity breakaways, perhaps unfairly, because I know that Gianni Savio, for example, the Androni Giocattoli manager, who's had a lot of success in placing riders in breakaways, says that that's not enough. He wants to win a stage here. And in fact, Lionel, Gianni Savio this is going to shock you, he was in the press room earlier. He was doing the rounds of the press room, angling, dare we suggest, to be interviewed. But what a joy it was when I did sit down with Gianni Savio and interviewed him in English. Gianni Savio, this is a world first. We've spoken hundreds of times over the years, but never in English before. But I want you to tell me, how is your team managing to get a rider in a breakaway every single day at this Giro d'Italia?
First of all, my English is very bad.
No.
So I hope that this will be well. Our team is a team with passion, with enthusiasm. We prepare very well this Giro because in the last 2 seasons we were not invited. Last year, I remember well that I told this is a big injustice. Always we have honored the Giro, and so we prepare well this race with a preparation in the mountain of Sierra Nevada in Spanish. This was, first of all, to be present with a good condition in Tour of the Alps, after in the Giro. And so now we have all the enthusiasm, all the passion to be protagonist, and if we go in breakaway, is not a question for publicity for our sponsor. No, we are in the breakaway with the idea to win a race.
Gianni, you always like to talk about the formation of your team like it's a football team, the modulo. What's the modulo in this Giro?
Is a change in stage flats or in the stage of mountains. But normally there are 5 riders that will be able to enter in the breakaway, because it's not so easy to enter in breakaway. To enter in the breakaway is necessary the work of all the team, the work, in this case, of 5 riders. 2 riders normally are leader, Francesco Gavazzi.
Attaccanti, the strikers.
Attaccante 1. Attaccante 1. The 2 are registi.
Playmakers.
The 2 are playmakers, and 1 sure is il finalizzatore.
The finisher.
Yes.
Last thing, Gianni. A few years ago, I was with you at the Giro, and I was in the team car, and you, in that Giro, Vladimir Belli was doing well, and you had a slogan that you kept repeating to the riders, "Per chi ci vuole male," and it was to motivate the riders, and it meant for all of those people who wish ill upon us, this is who we're riding against. Is there a slogan in this Giro?
The slogan is determinated. Always determinated. In all the meeting with the riders in the morning, I tell them cattivi e determinati. Cattivi is bad, no?
Nasty.
Yes, nasty. But nasty only sport.
So nasty and determined. Yes. That's the slogan of Androni Giocattoli's Giro d'Italia. Thank you, Gianni.
Thank you very much.
Finally, 2 weeks into, he's been in the break every day, his riders. Every single day that there's been a breakaway, which is every day except the time trial, he has had a rider in the break, and it's taken, the best part of 2 weeks for him to get onto the cycling podcast. I think probably, he can relax a little bit when he comes into the press room tomorrow. I was out in the team bus parking, and I counted how many different sponsors are on the Androni bus. I don't know how many of these feature on the jersey. I'm going to count the jersey tomorrow, but on the bus there are 37 different companies backing that team.
Yeah, we once, for years, Gianni Savio had a column in Pro Cycling Magazine. We once did a column where we went through every single one of the sponsors, and Gianni had to explain the nature of the deal. And I'll always remember one called Guava Berry Golf. And as far as I could tell, I might be doing Gianni a disservice here, but as far as I could tell, the team had basically pitched up one night at a hotel in Colombia, and it was the Guava Berry Golf Hotel. And I think Gianni just had a nice conversation with the receptionist, and they'd ended up on the jersey.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Independent research shows 10% of sports nutrition products would get a professional rider banned. Trust Science in Sport, the world's highest standard of banned substance testing.
Thank you to Science in Sport for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast. There's a 25% discount code for listeners of the Cycling Podcast. If you want to buy some Science in Sport products, go to scienceinsport.com, and when you check out, enter the discount code, which is SISCP25. That's SISCP for Cycling Podcast 25. We'll play another one of our nutrition questions, I think possibly tomorrow. I'm not sure. We've been getting listeners to send in their questions about their own nutrition when they're cycling, whether they're racing or riding sportives or what have you, and then putting those questions to Science in Sports experts. So we will play one of those very soon.
We were going to resume Lionel Learns Italian tonight. We were going to, but we're not. I'm going to spare you that. We originally, the first and only episode of Lionel Learns Italian, introduced the classic Italian travelogue, Viaggio in Italia by Cesare Piovene. Cesare, is it Cesare or Guido? I can't remember. Anyway, there was a great passage on Ferrara that I'd saved before the Giro, and I'd like to translate it for you now, Lionel. Ferrara is notorious for being the most sensual of our Italian cities, the freest, and it has a kind of erotic record in Emilia. Yes, together with Rovigo, Ferrara has the record of illegitimate sons in Emilia. Amazing. What an extraordinary piece of writing. I hope, with all my heart, not relevant in any way to the Cycling Podcast, but, there's a bit of a local colour for you, Lionel.
Well, Ferrara also has a famous resident, who has a surname that's only one letter different.
More on that tomorrow.
Wow, that's a teaser, isn't it? Well, before we go, let's just recap a little bit of, the race and the fallout. Simon Yates in the press conference this evening was asked, whether he was worried about the fact that it was rainy. I thought their positioning was very good, coming into the climb, and obviously being at the front on the climb meant they were at the front on the wet descent. But he did make the point that the thing about this Giro is that somebody is always going to try something. There was potential for something, and as we watched the finish there, Daniel, you were saying this is surely made for Yates to have a go here. I think the only thing that would have discouraged him would have been the distance between the top of the climb and the finish line on the motor racing circuit.
Well, that carrot has dangled every time there's been a finale like this, because if Yates could have whistled it down a little bit more or if someone could have whistled it down a little bit more to 20 riders, then there was the chance that there were bonus seconds. There would have been bonus seconds up for grabs for him, another chance to extend his advantage. Just on positioning, Lionel, one thing I noticed as well in the finale, Sergio Henao today was very aggressive in the finale, and to me that was a definitive statement. It was confirmation that Sky are going for stage wins with riders other than Chris Froome, and if they haven't completely given up on Chris Froome's general classification ambitions, then they're certainly keeping an eye on other objectives now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the Zoncolan may change that, but with the finish tomorrow, Daniel, this climb of Montella, it's around 20 kilometres from the finish, so it's a long way out again. It's further out than this one today, so it does give people a lot of time to get back on. But you just never know. You're absolutely right. If there was a split and somebody's in a bad position, Simon Yates or Dumoulin or whoever could eliminate at least one or two other people from the equation. I mean, Yates said this evening that from what they expected, the finish was much harder and the climb was much harder, and it wasn't the straightforward sprint that they were expecting. And so tomorrow could well be the same, especially if the weather's bad.
Lionel, another thing that occurred to me in the finale, also listening to the Rai Italian TV commentary, is how few riders have abandoned this Giro. I'm not going to give the number because I'm almost certain to get it wrong, but it's probably about a dozen riders. However, with the weather being the way it is and the forecast being the way it is for the next few days, I think we're going to see some riders suffering they're already suffering with tiredness, but that leaves them exposed to illnesses, and I think we might see a bit of a flurry of abandons over the next few days.
Well, Daniel, I can tell you that there were 176 riders signed on for the Giro. Siutsu of Bahrain Merida didn't actually make it to the start line because he crashed in the recon before the time trial back in Jerusalem, so technically I guess 175 started, but there's still 169 in the race. You're right, the dropout rate is extremely low so far. We may see that change over the weekend with the Zoncolan, but I'm not sure.
We will see a change, won't we? I'm fairly sure of that, Lionel.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't like speculation, but I agree with you. We will see that change.
This is not speculation. This is a fact. Tomorrow, you talked about secret mission earlier. Tomorrow, we really are going on a secret mission in Treviso, aren't we?
Oh, can I spoil that one? No? Oh, so we've got 2 secret missions tomorrow.
Yes, we have got 2 secret missions tomorrow.
And although we won't be joined on the podcast tomorrow night by our captain and leader, Richard Moore will be back to see the race through from Saturday's stage on the Zoncolan all the way through to not quite Rome.
A community around the world. Stories and films with the most compelling characters. The world's finest apparel. Explore the world of cycling with Rafa.
Che la raccolgo con l'acqua lovina, ci gira nella tenevo giardina, che la raccolgo con l'acqua lovina.